if you're interested in going to art school, you can. I want to say this is coming from someone who went to art school. I do have a creative job now. I'm a working person. I make money doing art, and we don't live anymore in the world that our parents lived in. You can make money, you can have a career, you can support yourself on being a creative person. There are so many more jobs nowadays for creative people than there were back then. I just hope that everyone knows nowadays that you're not signing up to be a starving artist. I'll say there are some careers that are more lucrative than others. Don't let somebody make you shy away from going to art school if it's something that you really enjoy and you think you have talent for. We just live in a different world now, and it's a viable career path nowadays, so don't let anyone shy you away from doing that. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I have a pretty unique video today. I wanted to do a video where I talk about my college experience. As some of you probably know, I went to art school and I graduated a little bit over a year ago. And I wish that I had had the type of video that I'm about to make telling me about what it was going to be like before I went. So I decided that I am going to make that video. So as you can tell by my shirt, I went to Virginia Commonwealth University from 2018 to 2022, and I wanted to share my experience for prospective students or even current students or anyone that is interested in going to art school in general, even if you're not interested in going to VCU. And I also want to say that I am going to do a part 2 to this video. In the second video, I'm going to be showing my actual college portfolio and showing all of the stuff that I made while I was in art school, but this video is just going to be talking about my actual experience going there, classes I took, my experience in the programs that I was in, and stuff like that. This video is going to be in 5 chapters. I changed my major while I was in school, so I'm going to be talking about each of the different programs that I was in during my experience at VCU, and I'm going to put all of those chapters into the actual timeline of this video so that you can skip through if you're only interested in a certain section. I'm also going to be sharing a list of all of the classes that I took during each of these programs. I think that having a list of the actual classes that I took is really helpful. Personally, I'm a serious type A personality, and I'll talk about it later, but you really do need to keep track of your credits while you're in college and plan accordingly, because if you want to graduate on time, if you change your major like me, you need to plan ahead, and advisors aren't on top of you like your mom is, so it's always good to have a reference to see like what other people took, just so you know that you can get everything in on time. I do have to give a small disclaimer. That is that a lot of what I'm going to talk about, I don't know how much of it is still true. Like I said, I went to school from 2018 to 2022, so because of that, I don't know if some of the classes that I took still exist, if the programs are still run the same way, but I can only give you my experience, and I hope that I'm not too old and washed to have outdated information already, but this is my personal experience for all of these programs. And so my last little disclaimer before we actually start talking about my real college experience, I was in school for 4.5 years. Like I said before, and I'll talk about this a lot later in the video, I did change my major, and a lot of the credits from my first year didn't transfer into my new program, so I did have a lot of catching up to do. I also had 2 minors. The last 3.5 years that I was in school, I did classes every fall and spring semester, as well as every summer and every winter semester to get my time down just to 4.5 years. It was going to be like 5 or 5.5, and I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to be done, so that's why I'm saying it's important to plan ahead. If you change your major, you can still get things done in the amount of time. You just might have to take more credits in each semester, or you just have to plan ahead. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is the application process that I went through. The first thing that I'll say is that I originally applied to the VCU Cinema program. I was in that program for 1 full year. I will do the next section of the video is just going to be talking about that program, but this is just so you can get an idea of what the application was like. I originally chose to do cinema because it was my first real artistic love or passion as a cognizant person. I like drawing and stuff like that when I was a little kid, but when I was in elementary, middle school, when I really started to come into my own, making videos and stuff like that was my first real interest. So that's why I chose the cinema program. The application process was really simple. It was through the Common App. So I did the Common App essay. I also had to submit a small portfolio of art experience that I'd had. I'm pretty sure we also had to write some sort of personal statement about why you're interested in cinema. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along those lines. It was very small. I'll tell you a little bit of why I ended up choosing VCU. Main reason is because I got a pretty hefty scholarship to VCU. It was the only in-state school that I applied to. I'm originally from Virginia. It was the only in-state school that I applied to, and I got a Virginia merit-based scholarship for an in-state school. So it would have been the only school that I was able to use my scholarship for, because all the other schools that I had applied to were out of state. I also chose to go there. My older brother went to VCU as well. He was also in VCUarts, so he had already been having a great experience there. I also love Richmond, the city, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but something that I didn't realize at the time, which I realize is a true blessing for why I ended up going there, and obviously I know this now because hindsight is 2020. One of the great things about it is that VCU has great art departments. Almost all of their programs are awesome, and not a lot of the other schools that I had applied to had a great art school for other art mediums in addition to having a good film school. So I really only applied to film schools out of high school, and I realize now that when I decided to change my major, I probably would have had to transfer schools, not just change my major at my same school. I would have had to go somewhere else. So I realize now, because hindsight is 2020, that it was a great choice, because when I decided to change my major, I could still stay in Richmond at the same school, keep all my same friends, and just change my major. Okay, chapter 1 is the cinema program. So as I mentioned, that was the program that I applied to. I got in, and I am going to tell you a little bit about the program in general and then my personal experience in it. So the cinema program at VCU is a 3-year program. So it's not a 4-year. You are only in school for 3 years. Part of the reason why is because it's a very short curriculum, and because of that, all cinema students are required to either have a double major or 2 minors. The actual cinema program's curriculum is so small, and you don't have to take that many classes for it, so they require everyone to also pick something else to study while you're in school. I personally chose to have 2 minors, and those will be in a later chapter in the video. I had a minor in media studies, which is like advertising, and one in creative writing. And that was a pretty common combination of minors to choose for other film students. One of the other reasons why the cinema program is 3 years instead of 4 is because of their summer intensive program. The summer intensive is a required program for 2nd and 3rd year cinema students to do during the summer. Throughout the year, students write scripts and they pick 5 short films to create over the summer. I think it's like a month and a half or 2 months straight that you basically just shoot every day. Everyone works on every film, and you have a different role for each one, and you're just living in the city over the summer. Most of the cast for the films are either other VCU students or local actors. I think they do it like that during the summer because it's hard to have that much dedicated time during the school year when everyone's taking classes and working. It is a required thing to do during the summer for all 2nd and 3rd year students. You spend a lot of time doing that, and that's part of why it's a year shorter than most other degrees. So that's just a little information about the program. I'll talk about some things that I really liked about it, some things that I didn't. One of my favorite things about the cinema program is how small it is. It really is a very intimate small group. You definitely know everyone in your year. We would hang out together outside of class a lot. And honestly, we really pretty much do know everyone in all 3 years because you work together on a lot of projects. So it is a really nice way to make connections with people. One thing that you need to know if you're interested in doing that program or working in film is that film is an extremely collaborative art form. It requires a lot of teamwork, and you rarely are working by yourself. That's just something to know. Something else that I really loved about the cinema program is that it was very student-led. Because it's so small, a lot of the faculty have really good relationships with a lot of the students, and during my year that I was in it, all of the freshmen, so all of the first years, decided to do a project. We just asked if we could do it, and they were like, sure, where we wanted to shoot 2 music videos for VCU student musicians. So we did one for a band, one for a rapper who were students at school. And we just wanted to do that to get some hands-on experience before we started working on the actual short films we were shooting later in the year. And that was just something that it was one person's idea. We asked the faculty if we could do it and use all of the equipment, and they were like, sure. And that's something that I really enjoyed about it, is that a lot of the projects are spearheaded by other students, which is really nice. One thing that I didn't love about the cinema program is that it required a lot of you volunteering your own time outside of designated class time to learn things, even some things that I would have considered very fundamental. One example of this is that, I can't remember if it was either on Fridays or Saturdays, we had no class, and they would host what they called workshops in the cinema program building where basically upperclassmen would have all of the gear out. So like all the cameras, all of the rigs, all the lighting, microphones, sound equipment, and you were expected to come in for a couple of hours and basically just walk around and ask the older upperclassmen to teach you how to use those materials, which is fine. And it was, I guess, a good way to learn that kind of information because you're learning it from someone who can translate it very well for you by someone who's like been in the same position as you. But I felt like some of the information they were expecting you to get in there on your own time was some things that we should have just been learning in class. Like that should have just been part of the designated curriculum in class time instead of expecting you to like volunteer your own time, especially because a lot of students also had jobs or weren't able to come in on days when we didn't actually have class. That to me was kind of a big ask of students. Like I said, I don't know if they still do that, but that was something that really rubbed me the wrong way. And especially on times when I would be a lot busier, if I was working or if I had to go out of town, I felt like I was kind of falling behind. Even though I wasn't missing class time, I just felt like I wasn't able to like, I don't know, be as present as other students just because I had other commitments in my life. There was another thing that was required for you to go to that was not technically designated class time. Every Wednesday night, I'm pretty sure, they would host Cine Club. Basically just everyone gets together, watches something together, and then discuss it afterwards, which I did enjoy just because you're hanging out watching shit together. It was something that was required, like you were expected to be there. I don't know if they really took attendance, but like you were supposed to go, but it wasn't on your schedule, like it wasn't like a designated class time thing. I always felt like things like that should be optional if you want to engage more, or it's just like a little club that you can join if you want, if you have the extra time, but it shouldn't be something that is required. The last thing that I'll talk about for the cinema program was my favorite class, the history. I don't even know what it was called. History of film, probably parts 1 and 2, fall and spring semester. It was so informative. And I still find myself using stuff that I learned in that class, not just about film, but just about history and the important place and context that film history has in the scope of the entire world. It was such an amazing class taught by an amazing professor. I don't know if he's still there, but I really, like, it still resonates with me now. It's one of my favorite classes I've ever taken in college. Okay, so that is my chapter about the cinema program. The next thing we're gonna be talking about is the experience of changing my major from cinema to communication arts. During the summer after my freshman year, I kind of decided that I didn't want to do the cinema program anymore. The reasoning was a combination of two things. The first is that I work really well independently. I have always been like that. Also prefer to work independently. I don't mind working in teams and I find that I can work very well, but I find that I do my best work by myself. And I knew going in that it was going to be a very collaborative, teamwork based thing, but I think I realized while working on it that it just wasn't for me and I wasn't the right person to do it. And secondly, that whenever we were splitting up to work on any of the music videos or short films that we worked on during my first year, the one thing that I only ever wanted to do was be in the art department. If you don't know what the art department is on a film crew, it's the team that is basically doing a lot of the visual stuff. So they will do hair and makeup, costumes, sets, props, storyboarding, concept art, and that was always what I wanted to do. I am not a very technologically based person. I'm not great with computers or large equipment like cameras or lighting or rigs. Like, I'm not great with stuff like that. Conveniently, there was another program at VCU called Communication Arts where a lot of the people that graduate from that program work in art departments on film sets. That's like what a lot of people who graduate from the program that I did end up doing. They'll do character design, prop design, animation, concept art. So I learned about it and I was like, that seems like it would be a better fit for me personally. So this is what's tough about college, is that I decided a little bit too late to choose something for the incoming semester. So I had to take a semester, first semester of my sophomore year, as just an undeclared semester where I really just got a bunch of my gen eds done and worked on my 2 minors. That's why it's really difficult in college, because you have to like make your decisions at the right time and do it where the timing is still possible for you to apply to something or change something or declare a new major. So it is important to plan ahead, as I always say. And I will say I had a terrible advisor during this time. If you're not in college yet, I'll let you know every student has an advisor. Usually they are assigned to you based on your major. If you're undeclared, it'll just be a general advisor. And if you later declare your major, you'll get changed to a new advisor in that program. And your advisor is the person that you meet with to talk about class schedules, if you need help getting an internship, if you are trying to get into a class that is full, they can put in a recommendation for you. They do all that stuff, all of the administrational stuff for you in the computer system at your school. They're the person that you're supposed to go to. And like I said, at this time, I had a very bad advisor who really didn't give me great guidance or advice about changing my major. And I ended up having to change advisors just to get my change of major thing done. And it was a huge debacle. So my advice is you always need to advocate for yourself in advising meetings. They don't know what it is you want. You have to be very clear because advisors really can do so much for you. Like they can put you into a class that is full. They can literally do whatever you want in their computer. If you aren't vocal or know what you want or at least how to ask for help, they won't do it. So ask so many questions and double and triple check about like timing of classes, availability, planning your classes for the next couple of semesters to make sure you graduate on time. You just need to make sure that you advocate yourself in these meetings so that you can have the college experience that you want. That's my tangent about advisors. The last thing about my change of major is, like I said before, every art student in most majors is required to do a year-long program called Art Foundations before you go into your program-specific classes. The timing of Art Foundations is that it's mostly freshmen, and almost everyone starts AFO, is what they call it, in the fall. You do it the fall semester of your freshman year and the spring of your freshman year. And then you start your major the next fall. Like I said before, because the timing was so weird, I had to wait that fall semester just doing gen eds and then start it in the spring semester, which was very daunting to me because everyone was younger than me. Everyone already knew each other from the last semester. Everyone already had a semester under their belt in the program. I didn't know what to expect, etc., etc. So I was just very nervous going into it.
Hello, I am now editing the video and I realized that I kind of left out a chunk of information and I really want to be clear about it. So when I changed my major from cinema to AFO, because you do technically, your major does change to Art Foundations and then you technically like graduate from that program or complete it and then you change your major again to your major of choice. When I wanted to change into Art Foundations, I did have to apply to Art Foundations. So there was a possibility that I wasn't going to get in the AFO program because it is pretty hard to get into. And when I did that, I did have to submit a whole portfolio of lots of different types of art mediums. So I remember I did like a sketch, I did a painting, I submitted a film that I made and some photos that I'd taken. And I remember hearing from a lot of people at the time that when you're applying to AFO, they don't necessarily care like what level of talent you have at the beginning. So you don't need to show them like, I don't know, things that are outstanding. But what I've heard from a lot of people is that what they want to see is that you have the ability to like harness different art mediums and they just want to see that you're able to create. Like they want to see a lot of variety of things, like not all, like if you really like painting, they like to see a painting, but they don't want to see just paintings. Like they would like to see that you have the aptitude to like succeed in a lot of different creative fields because that is like one of the core principles of AFO. So I just think that it's important to know that you do have to apply. Clearly I got in.
But that brings us to the third part, which is Art Foundations. So we're going to talk about AFO, what it is, and what VCU's philosophy is on it. Art Foundations is VCU's 2-semester introduction to all mediums of art before any student goes into their focus area or their major. Every major in the art school has to do it. There's only a couple that are exempt from it. I think it's cinema, obviously, because I was in that, fashion merchandising, and maybe like one other thing. Pretty much everyone, if you're doing like painting, sculpture, photo and film, fashion design, all those people have to do it. So you're in a big group of people who are all interested in different things. Basically, the idea of it is that you learn the basics in every area of art. Most students that do AFO that's like your whole course load while you're in the program, because you do take like 4 classes a semester in the Art Foundations program, and maybe you'll take like an English class or like a math class outside of it. So most kids that are in AFO are in full AFO mode. There There are 4 main classes, and I'll talk about the classes that you take while you're in AFO. There are 8 classes that you take over 2 semesters that are all required. There's 4 main ones. They're called drawing, time, surface, and space. These are kind of meant to be a brief dive into the 4 different subsections of art mediums. The first class, drawing, is about the basics of drawing. You start very, very simple. It's like that scene from iCarly where she goes to take the art class at the rec center and they talk about painting 4 straight lines. You learn that, you learn drawing still lives, drawing things photorealistically, drawing from life, learn about drawing the figure, all of the things like that. It's mostly just pencil paper, charcoal and paper, Conti crayons and paper, like that's it. The second one, surface, is basically about all other visual mediums that are not basic drawing. So you learn painting, collage. Why can't I think of a single other visual medium? Anyway, it's like anything visual like that. In that class you also learn about simple color theory, and other basics of layout, composition, color, texture, stuff like that. Third class is called time. That one is all about time-based media, so it's mostly photography, filmmaking, so you learn about cameras, shooting stuff, how to edit videos, Photoshop, and also performance art. And the fourth class is called space, and that is all spatial media, so it's mostly sculpture, some performance art, stuff like that. You learn very basic things about structure, building with different materials. We took a class in like a wood shop, very basics of sculpture, 3D stuff. A lot of students find these 4 classes to be very preliminary. Honestly, a lot of people that I talked to thought they were kind of a waste of time. Like, for example, if you're somebody that is only interested in doing sculpture, you want to be a sculptor that shows in art galleries, don't have any interest in photography or filmmaking, you might think it's stupid to take the time class. Personally, I found it very helpful. For example, like in time class, they weren't just teaching us like how to make a movie, they taught us how to properly photograph your work, like if you're a painter, how to take a photo of it properly so that it translates well, how to edit it so that it looks perfect online, like on your website. So I found those kinds of things very helpful. The other classes that you take during Art Foundations, there's 2 semesters of a general art history class, so you take one in the fall, one in the spring, and it's basically survey of art, all of time, starts at the very beginning, covers every medium of art, all the way to modern day, which actually was a very informative class that I enjoyed. And then each of the semesters during Art Foundations, you take a project class, which is a short 5-week class during the semester where you get to choose one of the other majors in the art school, and you basically take a 5-week class where you do one project with one of the professors from that major. They usually do this so that you can pick like 2 majors that if you're not sure what you want to do yet, you can pick 2, take a project class in each of them, and then decide later which one you're actually interested in. Ended up doing a graphic design project class and one in the major that I ended up choosing, communication arts. So that is the course load of AFO. One thing that I do want to mention about AFO, before AFO, I had never taken an art class before. Obviously I took it in like elementary school when it was required, but I never took art in high school. I was never in like a studio art class or AP art like a lot of people are. I had always done art on the side. It was always something that I just enjoyed, but I never thought about doing it in school just because I did a lot of it on my own time. I had a mental breakdown after my first AFO class. I think it was my first drawing class, and he had assigned some homework assignment. I went home, tried to do it, and I literally like had a full-on breakdown about it, thinking that I was not built to do that. It was scary for me. If you are in the same boat as me, it's never too late to start. There's no amount of experience that makes you better or worse or more or less suited to try something new, especially if it's in an educational environment. So I encourage you to do whatever makes you happy, even if you feel like you might not be qualified to do it yet. The last thing that I'll talk about for AFO is how they recently changed their process, how you get out of AFO into the major that you want. Before I was in it, for example, when my older brother was in the program, they had this thing where after you did AFO at the end of the year, you had to apply to the major that you wanted by showing them a portfolio of stuff that you made during AFO, and you would rank the majors that you wanted to be in. I think they mainly did this because they needed to control the number of people going into each major because they didn't have enough space in all of classes for everyone. But it was actually very scary for people because you might have spent an entire year and a lot of money paying to do AFO, and then maybe you didn't get into the major that you wanted. So a lot of people complained about it, needless to say. And actually the year that I did AFO was the year they changed it. And nowadays you can just pick what major you want to do at the end. You just declare it at the end of your AFO year. Like I said before, I did AFO in the wrong order, so I did it in spring first and then fall semester second. I really wanted to do graphic design. Graphic design is a really, really big, very successful program at VCU. It's like the best art program at VCU. It's the best public art program in the country. I really wanted to do that. However, the graphic design program at VCU is very strict and they only let students in on a fall spring basis. So you can only do it if you do your first semester in the fall and then the second one in the spring. Fall, spring, fall, spring. They do that because their course load is very structured. Like you have to take the classes in a certain order. And I didn't want to wait another semester to start classes. I wasn't going to take like the spring off and then start again in the fall. I just had no interest in doing that. I ended up choosing Comm Arts. I chose it because it's the biggest, it's larger, they have more classes, and they are way more flexible with how you do your classes. That is why I chose Comm Arts. Okay, chapter 4 is my experience in communication arts. So like I said before, I think Comm Arts is the biggest art major at VCU. If it's not, I don't know what is, but it's very large. It's a program that allows a lot of flexibility for students. Lots of students in the program are able to focus on one of their own interests by choosing classes that reflect them. And there's lots of different types of career paths that come out of Comm Arts. Generally, very generally, the way I describe it to other people is I would consider Comm Arts to be art for new media. So think about illustration and design, character design, storyboarding, book illustration, animation, game design, concept art, stuff like that for all new media. All of those things are relevant to Comm Arts and they have classes in all of those things, but you can't choose one of those things to actually focus in. Like it won't say that on your degree, but you can choose your classes based on any of those things that you like. There is one named Comm Arts focus that can go on your degree, which is called scientific illustration. That's for people who want to do the types of illustrations that end up in like science textbooks or science journals. That's the only one that they have that will actually appear on your degree. Comm Arts has its own building on campus. You are around a lot of students, Comm Arts students, all the time. It's not a nice building. It's falling apart. VCU needs to give it more funding or rebuild it or just make it better, but I guess it has charm. But it is nice that the program does kind of have its own designated building where everyone just kind of lives all the time, and there's usually space to work outside of class time in empty classrooms and stuff like that. So there's always somewhere to go if you need space to work away from your dorm or your apartment. We're going to talk about the classes. I am going to show you all of the core classes that I took that are required. So these are all classes that you have to take. Some of them, there might be like an alternate, like if you don't want to take this one, there's a different one you can take, but I'm just going to show you the ones that I took, and then I will also later talk about all of the electives that I chose during my time in Comm Arts. I tried to put these classes in order of when I took them. Like I said, I am an old geriatric woman and my brain is fried, so I don't actually know if these are the order that they go in anymore. Most basic classes, figure drawing 1, figure drawing 2. The first one is just called the figure, where you learn how to draw a damn figure. You draw a million figures over and over and over again. It's just a figure drawing class where you stand at an easel 3 hours and draw a figure. That's what you do the first one. The second one is a lot of the same. It's called the figure in context. You're just drawing more dynamic figures, usually more than one, putting them in environments is what it is. The next class is called the history of visual communications. This is the only required history class. It's just kind of like a survey of art history that is related to Comm Arts field. So comics and other like comic book illustration, and also film, animation, stuff like that. That's like the kind of history class that one is. Next class is called Visual Studies Design. Very basic class where you learn very simple, fundamental concepts related to design. So composition, layout, proportion, color, and you do projects that help you learn each of those things. Next class is called Fundamentals of Typography, where you learn about fonts. If you know me, if you know my art, you know that I love a good font. This was one of my favorite classes that I ever took. So interesting. Next class is called illustration, painting, and drawing. That's exactly what it sounds like. You learn about painting. It's a lot about color theory and how to mix colors in paint. Also similar, you're learning to execute and put into practice a lot of those composition and design concepts. The next class is called digital drawing, which is very simple software class. They basically just teach you how to use Photoshop for drawing, so how to draw on the computer and how to use Adobe Illustrator. The next class that I took, the hardest class that I took in college, was called Digital 3D Studio. It was a basic preliminary prereq class for a lot of classes at CommArts. Basically, they just teach you how to 3D model. Very basic. We used a program called Maya, Autodesk Maya. Genuinely, like, one of the hardest things I have ever learned. That's a required class that you have to take. The next class is called Concept Drawing, which is learning about concept art. Over the course of the semester, you get put into a group where you basically do some world building together. You like create your own fantasy or sci-fi, or in my case, we did a steampunk world, and then everyone creates a character for it. You design a character, you design a set or like a environment, bunch of props for your character. You also learn how to lay it out properly like they would in Hollywood, how you would present concept drawings, and you also have to pitch your world to the class. The next class is called Sequential Imaging, and it's a class that just talks about all different types of art that are images shown in sequence. For example, we did some comics, storyboarding, animation, stuff like that. And then the last required class is just a class you take during your last year called Senior Portfolio. You just make stuff that you like that is in your style for your portfolio. You also make a website for yourself, you make a logo and a business card. So if you want to work freelance, you have all that stuff ready to go out the gate when you graduate. So those are all of the required classes that I took in CommArts. I took 6 electives during my couple years in the program. This is what they were. I took Imagery for Children, which was a children's book illustration class, which I loved. It was so fun. I took a class about logo design, and the third one that I took was a film history class about vampires. You'll notice when I talk more about my minors in the next chapter that after I changed my major away from cinema, I still love learning about movies, watching them, especially in the context of a film class. So I took a lot of electives that were about film history because they're fun, and if it's gonna be an elective class, I'm gonna do something that I think is fun. Other 3 classes that I did as electives, I did an independent study with a CommArts professor, which you can set up with any professor that you like. You basically have to register on like the class registration system and fill out a form that your chosen teacher also has to sign. And basically you can do whatever you want. If you are like have a specific project that you want to work on, or like an idea that you have that you want that teacher's guidance on, like that can be your independent study, and they just review it with you or give you their ideas. And I know a lot of students do that, especially if there's a teacher that you really connect with or you think like have similar experience to something that you want to do. It can be a really cool thing to do. And then the last 2 electives that I used to fill my last credits, where I did 2 internships during my last semester. Most internships, if they're unpaid, can also qualify for credit. And even if it's not one that they like send out to the students like, hey, here's internships if you want to apply for one, if you find a different one, you can ask if it can apply for a credit. So I actually did 2 in the same semester. One of them was I worked at an art gallery. If you've ever been there, it's called the 1708 Gallery. It's actually very well known. So while I was an intern at 1708, I basically worked as a gallery assistant. I helped to install and deinstall exhibitions from visiting artists, like putting up their work, painting the walls, fixing the lighting, stuff like that. I also did a lot of admin work, like helping send out stuff to donors, doing stuff on the computer. I also got to design some like banners and flyers for events that they were doing for new exhibitions and for events in the community. At the end of the year, I got to help work at the big event that they do, which is an outdoor exhibition, art exhibition called Inlight, where everything lights up. So I got to help install that, which is really cool. They do that internship, I think, every semester, and usually they'll have more than one student as an intern. So if you're interested in that, I really recommend it. The woman who owns the gallery is awesome, and they always have really cool exhibitions there, so it's a cool place to be. And then the other internship that I did during my last semester was actually with VCU. I work in the communications department for the College of Humanities and Sciences. They have interns every semester in that same office. I was their graphic design intern, so I helped make banners, flyers, social media posts for their social media, editing videos, making stuff for donors and alumni, just a lot of stuff like that. The team that works in the office is awesome as well. So those were both really cool. I definitely recommend trying to get some sort of internship during your time in the program. There's so many cool internships that are open to art students. Like, you don't have to do something that is in your desired field. I mean, you can if there's something available to you, especially if it can apply for credit or if you can make money doing it. But I really enjoyed both of the things that I did, and I still have both of them on my resume because they're just great experiences. So I definitely recommend doing an internship. Those are all the classes that I took while in Comm Arts. The next chapter is going to be talking about my minors. This will be pretty quick. So like I said, I did have 2 minors. So like I said before, when I started in cinema, it was required for all students to either have a double major or to have 2 minors. But then when I changed my major, I decided to keep them just because I still really enjoyed them. My first minor was in media studies. The media studies minor at VCU is 18 credits in the mass communication school at VCU. So there's a list of possibilities. There's some that are required, and then you can take some electives as well to fill the rest of your credits. Media studies is kind of a general minor. It can be advertising, public relations, journalism. I mostly took classes that were advertising based because that was mostly what I was interested in. They have a lot of different possible classes that can go into this minor, so you can kind of pick whatever you want. Something that I really enjoyed about media studies and being in the mass comm school, because mass comm is in the business school, I really enjoyed the crossover of creative students, comparing those that are in the art school versus the creative students that are in the business school, because the projects in a lot of the classes that I took for my minor were very different. They were like approached differently than they would in the art school, and a lot of the students have very different philosophies and approaches to being creative and how they complete projects. So being in both of those pools of students was very cool. I'll also talk about all the different classes that I took for this minor. So that, like I said, there were some required, some elective. The required classes that I took were Mass Comm 101, which is very basic. The next 2 classes are stupid and I hated them. They're required. There's one called Curiousness and one called Story. I think they're required for all students who do like creative advertising. I don't even know, like a lot of different students in the business school have to take it. On a very basic level, I would consider these classes to be trying to teach creativity to people who are not naturally creative. So it's a lot about how to generate ideas, how to brainstorm, how to whittle one of those big ideas down into something that is more poignant. But I felt like they were kind of a waste of time, mostly because I personally believe most people are creative and are able to harness that without like it being spoon-fed to you like you're a child. I hate to talk about it like that, but that's really how it felt. I really despise both of those classes, but they are required, so Godspeed if you're taking one of those. The next required class is communications law. You basically just learn all legal stuff about that applies to communications, creativity. So we learned about like copyright and fair use. I can't think of a single other concept that we learned about for some reason right now. I promise we learned about a lot of other stuff. Another required class is called Piloting the Enterprise. Also a dumb class. There are some useful things about it. Piloting the Enterprise is basically teaching students how to be an entrepreneur. Kind of is like if you are interested in freelancing or running your own business when you're older, it kind of teaches you the basics of doing that. And then I also was required to take a public relations class, so I did that. And then I took 4 elective classes while in media studies. This is like what I said before, there's a whole lot of classes that you can choose from and lots of different categories. I took 2 classes that go together, one called technical prowess and one called visual acuteness. Technical prowess basically just teaches you how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, I'm pretty sure. And then visual acuteness was like a follow-up class where you just do more detailed projects in each of those programs. So those were actually very well taught. I learned a lot, really enjoyed them. The other 2 elective classes that I took in media studies were for fun, as I mentioned before. I took one class called the history of the documentary because, like I said, I love film history classes. They're my favorites to take. And the second one that I took, truly one of my favorite classes I've ever taken, was called Hitchcock and His Disciples, just a film history class about Alfred Hitchcock. And that was my media studies minor. One thing that I'll say, minors are so easy to get. A lot of people don't realize, like if you are a junior or even a senior in college, if you look back through your transcript, you probably have enough random classes to make a minor, even if you didn't even know that you were doing that. Like if you just tend to take classes like elective classes in similar categories just because you enjoy it, you probably can make a minor out of that. So the second minor that I did was creative writing. The creative writing minor is 18 credits in the English school. I was looking through my transcript and I think all the classes that I took for this were elective. Like, I don't think there were any that you had to take. It was just a long list of classes that you could take and you just picked the ones that you wanted. I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was. I picked this more just because I personally enjoy writing, and I especially enjoy doing it when there's an established way of showing or peer reviewing it. Like, I just like the class environment of everyone writing the same thing and then getting to read each other's things and talk about it. I really enjoy writing in that setting. So that was really why I was interested in doing creative writing. So the classes that I took 6 classes. Each of them, I guess, were 3 credits, and that was my whole minor. That's what I'm saying. So many minors are so short. Like, you can get it done in so quickly. The 6 classes that I took, the reading and writing of fiction and poetry, which was really fun. That was actually the one singular class in college that I took with my boyfriend. We took it together. I can't believe we did that. Second one that I took was called writing creative nonfiction. That was probably one of my favorite classes that I ever took, and I think I did some of my best writing ever in that class. Third one, writing for stage and screen, where everyone wrote a screenplay for a movie and we all read them. The fourth one, persuasive writing, very simple writing persuasive essays. Fifth one, writing fiction. And the last one that I did was I did another internship at the VCU student-run literary journal Blackbird. If you didn't know, VCU does have an online literary journal that is curated completely by students. I really enjoyed working at Blackbird. I did it for 1 semester. Lots of people do it for multiple semesters though. I'll put a link to it in the description if you want. Actually, I'll put a link to the specific issue of it that I worked on, so you can read that one if you want. So everyone does 2 out of 3 jobs. All of the interns are literary interns, so every week you read submissions from people. There'll be a combination of poetry and fiction and nonfiction. They do it through like an online forum. You read and decide whether to pass on or to reject all the things that you read, basically. So you get to help curate the things that make it into the final issue. So everyone does that, and then also choose if you want to be an editorial intern or if you want to be, page builder. So I was a page building intern. The editorial interns will go through the actual chosen submissions and edit them. So I was on the page building team, which coded the website. That's not something that I would have ever thought that I was built to do. Like I said before, I'm not a techie person, but they taught us how to use Adobe Dreamweaver, and we did a class on very simple, basic HTML coding. We put everything on the website, which was really cool, so I'm glad that I was able to work on that. And that is all. It's everything about my entire college experience. I mean, of course, that's not everything, but I'm gonna leave you with some closing thoughts. Like I said, I had a generally positive experience at VCUarts. I can only speak for myself. I only know my own experience. But I will say that while I did enjoy being at VCU, I think my main love of being in college was for the city of Richmond. I have long said this to people in my life that I think a lot of people who go to VCU identify more as a Richmonder than you do as a VCU student. I think that's partially because the campus is so well integrated into the city. I love Richmond. It's a great place to live, especially as a young person. Spend your college years. If you are interested in going to VCU, if you're a prospective student or a prospective arts student, I definitely recommend that you check out the VCU art programs that they have to offer. And if you have any questions about VCU Arts in general, or just being in art school, you can totally let me know in the comments. You can send me a DM on Instagram. I would love to help you out in any way possible because, like I said, I wish I had guidance like this or just deep information like this when I was looking at schools. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm hoping to do a part 2 to this video where I actually show stuff that I made in school, like going through my art school portfolio. I don't know if it'll be the next video, but hopefully in the next month or so I'll have time to make that video. So stay tuned for that if you want to see some of the absolute debaucherous stuff that I made while I was in school. And I think with that, that'll be the end of this video. If you want to see more from me, see what I'm doing now in my creative journey after having graduated from school, you should definitely follow me over on Instagram and on TikTok, where I post a lot of my art stuff. And here on YouTube, I post a lot of art related content as well if you want to check any of that out, if this is the first video you've seen from me. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, for being here. Don't hesitate to ask me any questions you have about school, art school, VCU Arts in general, anything about it, let me know. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.